I'm Emily Mashak, and you are listening to Tuned In to NoCo, Town Square Media's public affairs show that lets you know what matters in NoCo. I'm sitting down today with Cara Viana Hollenbeck, an intuitive coach and a healer, to talk about how dancing can benefit people's health. So thank you for joining me today, Cara.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, before we get into dancing, let's talk about you. Who is Cara?
So I moved out to Colorado about 2 years ago from Hawaii, and I'm a healer, I'm a teacher, and I'm a coach. So mostly what I do is work with people on whatever blocks or issues or traumas or triggers they've got that they kind of carry along, all that baggage that we carry throughout life, to help clear that and empower them to get to be happy and free people, especially those of us who are on the sensitive side of things and sometimes the energy of the world or emotions that other people are feeling or just the daily stuff throughout life can feel a little overwhelming. Mm-hmm. So those are the people that I work with a lot in helping them learn how to manage those sensitivities and come to a place of feeling really joyful as their baseline.
Yeah. Can you give me an example of one of these cases? I think that might be a little
sure.
far out for some people who don't work with this a lot.
I totally get it. So I just led a workshop last night about being an empath, and that's a word that we hear a lot nowadays, which is kind of handy. And I was just talking with some women who were asking me about when they walk into a room, for example, and feel immediately stressed, or that feeling that you have when like the hackles in the back of your neck go up a little bit, and it just feels like an environment you're not sure you want to be in. And how to go about navigating when that's maybe something that has to do with work or something that feels like you should be there, how to not walk away from that feeling totally overwhelmed or kind of run down. Another example would be if you sat down to have dinner with a friend who was going through a lot of hard stuff and you've been having a pretty good day, you had dinner with this friend, and then you felt really horrible about everything by the time you left. So when you're a person like that who's fairly sensitive to the people around you, which a lot of us are, you kind of pick up on that. Learning to navigate how to not take on everybody else's stuff and feel overburdened by it is one of the first steps that people come to me looking for.
That's really interesting.
Does that help?
Yes,
okay.
Yes, no, that does. That totally makes sense. I can kind of see that in myself a little bit. I'm definitely recognizing what you're saying. Now, how did you get involved with dancing? Where does that come into the picture?
So I started teaching fitness classes about 12 or 13 years ago, and I was really getting into yoga and kickboxing, and I was teaching all these fitness classes, but there was something that I was craving, and I wasn't sure what it was. And I began teaching a class called Buddhimana Yoga, which was yoga with dance and loud music and a lot of freedom and a lot of expression. And it kind of got to bring in a little bit of the spiritual side to we also really want to sweat and get toned and, work out our stresses. So I taught that for a long time. And after quite a few years, I was craving even more freedom in it. And then a girlfriend of mine had created this incredible class called Embody, which is a women's dance class that's all about it's called Your Soul's Dance. The idea being just move however your soul wants to move. Forget all the choreography, forget all the classical, this is the way it looks good, and just move how you want to move. So when that came along and they said they were looking for teachers, I knew it would be a great avenue to bring into what I like to do. So it's really, I have zero technical dance training. I was not a ballerina. I would not claim to be an amazing dancer. I just have, I have the freedom now, after doing this for a long time, that I'll stand up in front of a group full of people and look like a complete idiot and do so freely in the hopes that then in the room they will also feel free to just do whatever they want to do. And we don't get a lot of freedom like that in normal life unless you're alone in the shower, kind of singing into the hairbrush or something. We don't really cut loose and just let your body move in weird ways.
So it's a great stress reliever, it sounds like.
It's a tremendous stress reliever. And it's an amazing emotional release. Our bodies are incredibly wise, and they have the capacity to process our emotions through movement. You notice it. I have 2 small dogs, and I watch them. I learn a lot from them, and I see if there's something that really stresses them out. Like if my boyfriend was watching football and his team did something really good or really bad, and he yelled, in excitement at the TV, and they jumped and then looked around to see, is something wrong? Is there a problem? And they go into that stress response, which we do too as humans. As soon as they realize I'm not in danger, nothing's going to hurt me, they give a big full body shake, and then everything's fine. Even if they've gone through a really stressful something, it's been, we were moving or something happened that had a whole day full of a lot of stress. The minute I say, you guys ready to go for a walk, they give this big full body shake, and then they're panting and happy, and everything is forgotten. And we don't remember to do that as humans. We sort of bottle and stuff and wedge and cram all the stresses and emotions and reactions, and then we don't know why we have a sore shoulder and a hip and a rib and all these things. So dance is one of the great ways to let your body unwind that.
Mm-hmm. How does dancing help with physical health?
So this one I think is really fun. Part of it is, and I don't know if other people can relate to this, I'm someone who loves to move. I really do. I've taught fitness classes, but if it's not fun, I'm not going to maintain it. I can't tell you how many times in my life I've said, that's it, I'm starting a running routine. I'm absolutely going to become a runner. This is the time it's going to happen. And then I go outside and I do it once and I'm like, oh yeah, I hate this. It's really boring.
Story of my life.
Which is why I'm not a runner.
Yeah.
But if you take me to a class that's dance and movement, it's fun. By the end, I have this big smile. It flew by and I'm sweating. And those are the kinds of things that I'll come back to again and again. So that's a big part, is you'll want to actually do it. Another piece is that we have a tendency to move our bodies in really linear fashion. We sit, we stand, we bend, we maybe torque side to side, but all of our joints have this incredible range of motion that we rarely actually use. When was the last time you did a snake move with your body and you really rolled through the flexibility that it has? I heard recently some scientists have put out this information, and I'm going to slightly misquote it here, but I'll give you the really general. There's a joint in your ankle, and I think they call it the talus joint. Anyway, it has to do with ankle flexibility. And they've determined that they can pretty well gauge the longevity, like how long you're going to live, based on how much flexibility you have in this joint.
Wow.
Which blew my mind.
Yeah.
The really cool part being you can get greater flexibility in that joint. And what they were saying was, you think about the way that old people walk, that shuffle, where they're not really moving, not really lifting their feet. There's not a lot of bend or squat happening. And that's sort of getting to the tail end of the longevity of life, and you can see it in that joint. So there's something to be said for our mental and physical health, but also our kind of anti-aging and longevity by keeping our joints limber and our body flexible and fluid, especially when we move in circular motions. Not much of what we do is in a spiral or a circle in normal life. But in dance, you bring that out. You bring in a hip circle or you twist of the wrist, and that's a really, we think about that in yoga. We think about the masculine and the feminine sometimes, or in energy work. And the masculine moves in a very linear fashion. And traditional yoga poses move in a really linear fashion. You think about kind of the way they move on 2 planes, forward, side. But the feminine moves in circles and spirals energetically. And this is in many different modalities. That's the same. So these feminine circles and spirals in your hips and you think about the way that you want to move when you hear certain music, and it inspires that sort of rhythm in your body. There's just a balance there is all. It's not, if you're a masculine person, you only move like this. It's just that balance that we all want to have of our own energy. So, and in our bodies too, we want to have a balance of moving in a way that's linear and a way that's circular, in a way that is strength and in a way that's flexibility.
Mm-hmm. So it kind of brings out what's inside of us, even though we might not recognize that every day.
Exactly.
Do you have any personal stories where you've seen dance really impact someone mentally or physically?
So I had actually myself, the very first time I got to do this kind of dance was And I'm just going to go for it here because
go for it. You're all good.
So I was at a retreat, and it was 2 weeks after I'd had a miscarriage. So I had gone through this very emotional experience with my body, and I hadn't moved a lot since then, obviously, as you're supposed to rest. And the dance began, and I spent most of it. In fact, I have no idea what anyone else was doing. I can't tell you if they were up, down, jumping, screaming. I don't know, because I had my eyes closed the entire time. Mostly I was on the floor off to the side. We had this kind of big space, and I was rolling around just so in the music. And what happened is I fell in love with my body again. I realized that I was holding some fear and some resentment and some, it's a traumatic thing that you can go through. And getting to have a chance to just cry and move and feel my body moving was this coming back to this place of truly loving and trusting my body. And it was a really potent, powerful moment for me. And I remember the song at the end of the class and how I just had these happy tears streaming down my face and feeling so full of love and gratitude and for this body that I get to be in and for all the experiences that it goes through. So that was my own first experience with Embody. Probably most people aren't coming in with that kind of a big event having just happened. But I do see sometimes people come in and they have some sort of a beautiful release or realization that comes to them.
Yeah. Well, I'm really sorry to hear that happened to you, but it's so lovely that you've been able to just transform and work through it with dance. That's really cool to see.
Thank you.
Now, last thing before we go, I want to ask, what other health or wellness tips would you recommend for people in 2020, dance related or not?
All right. So I am a meditation teacher. So I'm very biased, but I have a very different view of meditation than a lot of people do. I think about meditation as something that just brings you back into alignment with who you truly are. So people tell me all the time I can't meditate, and that's completely false. Maybe you can't do what you think meditation is. There's this real fallacy out there that meditation is clearing your mind. Well, your mind is not really meant to be cleared. That is extremely challenging to do. You might carry it for a couple of seconds before thoughts rush in because that's what your mind does. It's like a machine and it's always processing. So if you can find something that works for you, and that's why I think about these classes as like a movement meditation. Maybe it's putting on a song and letting your body move. Maybe it's just following your breath for 10 breaths. That's a meditation. You're doing it. It's great. Sometimes getting into that settled place can be stressful for us. Some of us keep going at a really, really fast pace because we're afraid if we slow down, we're not really sure what's going to happen. So you can meditate in that kind of like sped up place if you want to. You don't have to have your eyes closed. You don't have to be sitting in stillness. You can be having a gentle movement. You can keep your knee jittering if you've got all that energy. But anything you can do to bring yourself into that meditative state to help bring yourself back into that place of alignment. It might just be put your favorite song on and lay down on the floor and just listen to your favorite song for 3 minutes. But the more you do that regularly, I promise it stacks on itself. It amplifies over time the positive benefits that you get from it.
That's awesome. That's great. A new perspective, and it sounds like, something a lot more approachable than what we tend to think meditation is.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for coming in and talking to me today, Cara. It was so great to learn not only about dance, but also about you and all the great things you're doing here in Fort Collins.
Thank you. I really appreciate getting to meet you.
Again, that was Cara Viana Hollenbeck, an intuitive coach and a healer here in Fort Collins. You can learn more about her and how dance can help you mentally and physically by visiting NADIAMUNLA.com.